Hi, and welcome to VIBEZ Daily. This is a daily devotional curated by VIBEZ Church to help you practice the way of Jesus and be all that God has called you to be. You have joined us for our year-long series titled Devoted. Acts 2:42 tells us that the followers of Jesus were devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. This podcast was created to provide context and commentary for what you read each day. Just before our friends begin discussing today's reading, we want to invite you not only for fellowship, but for prayer as well. We have created the VIBE Daily Chat Group to offer you fellowship and a community where you can state your observations, ask questions about the reading or the podcast. You can join us by downloading the VIBEZ Church app in your favorite app store. Click Join the Conversation and join us today. And finally, we hope that you can join us for prayer. Prayer happens Monday through Friday, and more information on that can be found on the VIBEZ Church app under prayer. Now, let's begin our conversation on today's reading.
All right, welcome to day 23 of the VIBEZ Daily podcast, the devoted series that we've been in. I am back with my friends, my wife Victoria, and then Shameeka and Dylan, another couple. We got two couples here on the couch today.
Hey.
Just talking about scripture together. And so, yeah. Yeah, a lot of A last names, huh? But yeah, just excited to be back with you guys again. Just before we jump in, just want to remind you again, you'll hear it at the end of this podcast episode. All week I've been wearing our merch, and specifically from the Devoted collection that we have. And so if you want some and you're interested in having some of yourself, please make sure you stick around and hear how you can purchase that at the end of this podcast. But we are in Exodus, and so we will cover chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8 today. Left off with Moses reuniting with Aaron. They are actually on their way to Egypt and begin doing what God has asked them to do specifically. And so here in chapter 5, Moses has his first conversation with Pharaoh regarding what it is that the Lord has asked him to do. So, I won't get too specific here, kind of with a question. Anything that just jumped out to you guys in this first encounter with Pharaoh?
Yeah. One, I'm super glad that Moses and Aaron are being obedient to exactly what God has told them to do, and specifically saying what God said. But verse 2, Pharaoh off rip is just I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go. He's making it known that your God has no kind of credit or rapport with me. I don't know him. Yep. There's nothing for me to respect or reverence in regard to your God, and also no, I'm not letting you guys go. So that's something that definitely stuck out to me, is that we're continuing to see this lack of reverence, respect, or even knowledge of our Lord, their Lord, in these pharaohs.
Yeah. I think it's so funny that you say, he was my version says, who is the Lord? And why should I obey his voice? There is this haughtiness here. But I think it's so interesting that for the Pharaoh, it all came down to the work. Listen, you're making these people lazy.
Yeah.
You're pulling them away from their work. You're distracting them. And so, God's plans were so much bigger. Yeah, it's all about the money. God's plans were so much bigger. It had nothing to do with this work that you have them doing.
Yeah.
This was your plan, and it just, in God's mind, it means nothing.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting that he was focused on that, and that he made their lives more harsh as a result of it, which is, he says, probably very hard to know that you went and did what the Lord asked you to do.
Yes.
But then the result of it is something worse. And you're hold on, wait a minute, Lord.
Yeah.
I did what you asked me to do. Now the people are turning on me. Now I'm watching them get hurt even more and beat even more. And so I think that there's a really hard thing you have to wrestle with when obeying the Lord, when initially it doesn't look like what you thought it would be.
Yeah. When it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good. There's more suffering. Yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Man.
It's a call for trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, I think that's why it's so important to go back to what God told Moses originally.
Right.
Right? Because he made it clear it wasn't going to be easy. He told him, he's not going to let you go the first time, right? it's gonna be hard, and you're gonna have to go back and forth and do some things. And so I think that's why it's important to go back to his word, right? And I think it's easy for us to remember the promises he makes of freedom, but try to neglect and forget the promises he makes of suffering, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he promised both. Like, he actually said both would happen. And I imagine it was easier to remember he said, yeah, we're going to be free, than it was to remember, like, it's going to get hard.
Yeah. But I do appreciate Moses just going back to the Lord with like his concerns and with his like just heart of like, okay, Lord, like I did exactly what you told me to do. Like, like, why is this happening? Like, is this what you really wanted? Because I think whenever we're able to be comfortable enough to have those kind of conversations with God, that's where we're able to like really see God in his goodness and all his glory, but also like build our faith as well as our relationship with God, because it's like, you actually care about my feelings and like how I feel about things and all those different things. And I get to present that to you for you to ultimately like continue to just reassure me and remind me like, no, this is within my plan. Like, you got it. We're good. Like, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Can't imagine the thought of anxiety that the Israelites might have had with lack of resources and still demanded like the same quota.
Yeah.
I think like, man, like you taking the resource from me and you expecting me
To produce.
to
still.
produce high quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is tough.
Yeah. Well, God, I mean, Moses does go back to God, and I think I do love that because it's right there in verse 23, I believe it says. Sorry, the way it's written in my Bible is a little weird. I have this 6 in the middle of it. Verse 22. So, yeah, he goes back to the Lord and he asks this, and as you said, he talks about like, why did it get harder, and what have you done? Why'd you send me in the first place? And I do think it's often short-sighted. It's kind of how we are, right? Like, we think that one step backwards just negates all of whatever God was going to do with us. And then but God replies to him, and I love that he just kind of reassures him here in chapter 6. Anything that you guys saw in God's response to Moses that you thought was interesting?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the very first words that he says to him is like, now you will see what I was going to do to Pharaoh. Like, this had to be a precursor, right? Like, the struggle, this unfortunate situation, like, it had to occur. So now you can see what I'm about to do. Like, this isn't the end all be all.
Yeah.
And so I love that he said that. And then I think I also love that he reminded him, like, I am the Lord. I am the same Lord that appeared to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I think he's continuing to reassure him, like I established this covenant with Abraham. I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do. Like, we're here now.
Yeah. Eric, you look like you got something on your mind.
Yeah, I just gotta. You said something, and I gotta call out. If Pharaoh said yes the first time,
Right.
I feel like it places the grace in Pharaoh's hand. Like, it's Pharaoh who extended grace to Israel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And said yes. Like, like, it places the grace in Pharaoh's hand. And like, it required Pharaoh to say no, to actually be opposition with God.
Yeah.
For God to prove that ultimately he was in control.
Yeah.
Right? Like he had to be opposed. Because if he didn't, then the Israelites would have given their thanks and their gratitude and their gratefulness would have been to Pharaoh.
For sure.
It'd have been like, Pharaoh, thank you for letting us go when we came and asked nicely. You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's like he had to be opposed.
Dang.
Because if he was not, then it never became a situation where God says, now let me prove to you who I am. So I love that you point that out, because that's exactly what God is saying. It's like, now you'll see who I am.
Yeah.
Because if Pharaoh said yes, you would have thanked him.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have worshipped us.
And I'm glad that you dug deeper into that, Eric, because like I do see these parallel things happening where we're seeing the story and what God is doing to Pharaoh, but he's also building up the faith of the Israelites.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to see that even through the wilderness. Is like God is proven to them just as much as he is to Pharaoh that like I am God. Like, you can trust me. Like, look at my mighty hand. Look at all the things that I've done, all the things that I've been able to accomplish. And just seeing that they're being tested, their faith is being tested just as much as like Pharaoh's being tested. That's really good.
Even
like,
bro, let's go back to chapter 5 to the point of like Moses saying like, so my people can have a festival and worship me. Like, if he had said yes, that last line wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Like that's boy, I can't find nothing else to throw at you right now.
But I love that too, because that's why God continues to say, like, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart
yeah.
so that I can show these signs. Like, I'm going to make sure that I have time to show myself.
Yeah.
And like you said, not even just to show the Israelites their trust in God, but even their trust in Moses as a leader, like, and like even like to respect him as a leader, because I mean, it doesn't even come really until the last plague and when they get to the Red Sea that it even mentions that, like, and the Israelites, you know, respected or you know, acknowledged him as their leader, right? Like, it takes a while, and so I think I love that he's just doing the slow progression of setting it up, so that, like you said, that their hearts to be postured towards the Lord, that their reverence to be postured towards Moses, and they like, because Moses is the voice of God to them right now.
Yeah.
So if they don't believe in him, they're not going to hear from God and even trust and believe and follow God ultimately. So I love it.
Yeah, and God is proving himself to be God as well to the Egyptians, because like we kind of talked about it even in yesterday, is that, like, you know, the Egyptians didn't fear God like how they did when Joseph was there. Like, there was a reverence that was there. Obviously that is lost, but I think later on in the scriptures we'll see that, like, even God's plan was to show the Egyptians, and we'll see some of Pharaoh's like right hand men and stuff eventually do get to that point where they're like, hold on, this is the Lord that is like literally hand that is in this. Like, he literally has his hands on the Israelites. Like, we gotta let out. Like, so yeah.
Back to the response that God gives Moses. I also see just like the fathership of God. Like, I could just imagine y'all talking to Blake or just any of y'all kids. It's like you might have promised them ice cream or something like that, and y'all went throughout the whole day, y'all had a planned out day, and they're just like, the only thing that's on their mind is this ice cream, and you kind of just reassuring them lovingly, like, we're gonna get the ice cream, I promised it that would happen, we got to do XYZ. I love that.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, his grace to repeat himself, right? Just to say it over and over again to assure him of that promise. Yeah. Okay, we kind of go from there to a genealogy of Moses and Aaron, which again is kind of in my opinion, an interesting place to place this. But anything that you guys saw as you look at, you know, it kind of gives us ultimately who led up to Aaron and Moses, right? So kind of what line they came from, genealogy wise. Anything you guys thought was interesting as you looked at that?
Yeah, like you said, it is an interesting place to just be like, all right, let's take a pause and go back and look at the family history. But it was reassuring, at least for me this time, to be able to read it and see some familiar names of Joseph's brothers and being like, okay, cool. Like, we're still seeing Joseph and Jacob, you know, and their family, but also like how it's leading up to Moses and their descendants. So
yeah, I think it's interesting because, like, genealogies normally I feel like come at time we're about to like transition, like, from story to story, and so I just feel like we're transitioning now. Like, this is where they've been. All right, let's give it a quick genealogy, catch us up again, because this is where we're going next, right? Like,
that's good.
Like, now we're about to move on out, and so I think it's just a great insert to just remind us, like, these are the people, like you said, these are the people who are going to be going into this wilderness area.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's a good thing, because knowing that is traditionally how it's been used as a point of transition, I think it helps us in our reading, right, to read that and go, okay, something's about to change, something's about to happen, kind of from this point forward, even as we read it. And it just is a signal for us, literally. Right. So
Yeah. And then I was gonna say, I don't know if it is still in chapter 6 or if it's in 7, but just even getting clarity on just Aaron and Moses' relationship, like knowing that they're brothers, but Aaron is actually older. And I kind of would have thought that Aaron would have been the younger brother, but to know that Aaron is 3 years older than Moses also gives context as well. And it's probably why Moses was like, hold on, I'm like the baby, if you will. Like, there's an older brother, like, you sure you can't
Yeah.
use him? So yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, they returned to speak to Pharaoh again. As you said, this is a shift. So kind of had like the first encounter, conversation, proposal. Hey, let me give you my first offer here. And now they're back before Pharaoh, Moses and Aaron, to again ask for the people to go. Anything that you guys saw in this first encounter kind of here, or this next encounter here in chapter 7?
This first verse in chapter 7.
Yes.
This, in my version ESV, it says, "See, I have made you like God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet." And I think this is so profound to me. Like, like God is like, I'm giving you this authority right here, because like I'm speaking to you one-on-one. So you are like God.
Yeah.
And Aaron is your mouthpiece. And I feel like that has been the desire and the setup and the plan that God has wanted all this time. Anyways, it's like, I want somebody to speak, on behalf of me, speak my words, right?
Yes.
Give the people my words so that everyone can know me and follow me. And I mean, even like you said, when we get to like, even when they start desiring a king, it's like, that's not what I want for you guys. I don't want y'all to have a king. I want you to have a person, a prophet, someone who just speaks on behalf of me and be in relationship. And so I think I love this setup here.
Yes.
That like you will say what I say, and you will do these signs and wonders in my name, so that like they will know who I am. And so I think it's so profound. It's so dope that like he even gives that reference in order to like Moses to speak on his behalf, because as you see, like Moses is so humble, he's probably too scared to do anything but say exactly what God says.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he God eventually and later in the scripture mentions that like Moses like is like the most humble of all. And so like the thing about him choosing Moses is that we do see that like what God said to him, he does go and say exactly to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Which, to your point, is probably what did make Moses like a really good candidate, because he already didn't believe in his own ability to speak, but that just gave room in his weakness for God to be like, all right, cool, good, like, because I know that you're going to depend and rely on me, as being your source of what you say. And then even as you're saying, like, for God to clearly say that Aaron is a prophet, and I feel like we get to see through Aaron's life what it clearly means to look like a prophet.
Exactly.
Like, this is God defining it out. And I think a lot of times in today's age, like, we hear people call themselves prophets, but their prophecy may be something that didn't even come from the Lord. Like, they're speaking things that the Lord didn't even say. So to see, like, again, Moses is in Aaron saying, thus said the Lord. Exactly what the Lord said is what they are to say. And I think that is still relevant for today and how prophets are to operate.
Yeah, I just want to throw this in. We were having a conversation between recordings, and Colin kind of brought up then
theologian.
I think this is where this is established, right? Where, to your point, I've made you like God to Pharaoh, and whereas to Pharaoh only believes he is a god, right? That was kind of their theology and their tradition in Egypt, that Pharaoh was God. And so it really does set up that showdown, of sorts, God versus God. And that's why God does equip Moses in that way and establish that, it's for that purpose specifically. So yeah, it really just sets the stage for this again, showdown of gods.
I love it.
But
verse 11.
Verse 11, go ahead.
Verse 11. I just love it. Well, okay, back up a little bit. So context, like Moses and Aaron, or Moses tells Aaron to like, let's throw down your staff, and it becomes a serpent. The thing that just tripped me out though is that like and Pharaoh called his magicians,
Yeah.
they were able to do the same thing, which is why they probably believed that they were gods also, or like they were using sorcery,
Yeah.
like evil magic, not from God, but getting results.
Yeah.
Like, but showing some type of power. Like, how many of us can say that we have put a stick on the floor and it turned into a snake?
Right.
Like, we don't see that, but they were using like evil powers that actually had power to do things and to transform things. I think that's like, it just blew my mind that like they were like these evil things and these evil like practices,
Yeah.
like they're real.
Yeah.
Like they're so real. Like let's not discredit them. And people use them because they get some type of result, right?
Yeah.
But God is like, no. Like, I am the ultimate authority. Like, and even in him speaking to Moses a couple chapters ago, he says like, I've given you these signs. I've given within your power these miracles to do. And it's kind of like God has given a part of his power to Moses in order for these signs to happen.
Yeah.
But just knowing that they have received some type of different alternate evil against God power to do things.
Yeah.
But God's like, no. My power is the one that reigns.
Yeah.
And so even just seeing the one stick eat up the other stick, or, you know, like, or staff, shall I say, eat the other staff, like, it just once again shows that, like, no, I'm a conqueror. Like I have the ultimate authority. So I think it continues to blow my mind as we look at these plagues, the different things that the magicians were able to accomplish using their like witchcraft or sorcery or whatever.
I also think it was interesting that like God did allow for the snake to be the thing that was that it turned into, and I was like, because we have read Genesis, like I'm like, that even shows God power, because that snake is slithering on his belly like how he cursed it to, you know. And so, and prior to, like, it had not been. So I think that showed God in his power even more, is that like the snake is a snake and doing what it's doing because I've cursed it as a result of his sin.
I would hate being a living creature and then going back to an inanimate object just like that. Just like that. Like, dang, I was just on Earth, just chilling.
And now I'm a staff.
Now I'm a staff.
Or I just got 8. Yeah, no, I do think I love that call out, because again, just back with this mind, if we are now viewing the rest of these next 12 or so chapters that we're going to go through, or just kind of a couple chapters, if we're now viewing it through the lens of like against the battle of the gods, like I think it changes so much about all these different kind of back and forths, right? Like it does, it almost reads like an epic movie. Like I'm seeing a Zeus versus Hades type movie, right? Like excuse me, where it's like, yeah, man, like you come with a counter blow, like I got a blow and here's a counter, and eventually somebody's gonna win out. But I think it does show that battle of, you know, good versus evil in that way. And I think it is interesting, to your point, that like, let's not just overlook that there is some power and effectiveness in evil, but ultimately we'll see it will submit you know, to good in the end. So yeah, so that leads to ultimately, like, it went from just kind of a demonstration, like a personal demonstration here before Pharaoh, to like, all right, well, now I got to just show all of Egypt, and now these plagues start, which kind of impact everybody. And so we get the first one, water is turned into blood. This is the Nile specifically that's turned into blood. Well, not just the Nile, really all the blood throughout Egypt. Anything you guys thought was interesting about this first plague?
I to the point of like the showdown God against God thing, verse 14, where God's like talking to Moses, he's like, all right, Pharaoh's heart is stubborn and he still refuses to let the people go. I just think of like this Avengers like powwow moment. Is like they coming together, like, all right, Thanos is, you know, he's right there, let's get ready to start off our first mission, or whatever the case may be. Like this plan of like, all right, this is what I'm about to do. This is the first plague that I'm about to perform. I think that's just like showing the partnership that God has with Moses. You know what I mean? Like just filling them in on even the heart of pharaohs is so cool to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't say even the water like in the pots in their homes and stuff like that's dope. That's crazy. But then again, he said in verse 22, the magicians did the same thing.
Yeah. I can only imagine just being like the average Egyptian citizen and like you just get up and your pot of water is now a pot of blood and like I mean, I don't know that Pharaoh's having this conversation with Moses right now.
Right.
Like, I'm just living my life, right?
Right.
And again, it's not like this is being broadcast on national television. They didn't have TVs back then, right? It's not on the radio. It's not, trending on Twitter or something. It's just like there's this conversation happening with Pharaoh and Moses and God, and I'm just living my life out here, and all of a sudden, my water is blood. And I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
That takes us really to chapter 8, where we get 3 more plagues here, but the second plague is the frogs. So, anything that just jumped out to you guys about this particular plague?
I think it's interesting that frogs come, they're all over the place, and now Pharaoh calls Moses, like, come on over here. And he pleads, and he's just like, plead to the Lord for me to take them away. I think it's really interesting that that they offered and said so give me a day, when? And Pharaoh was like, tomorrow. And he says, be it as you say, so you know that there's no other God. Tomorrow these things will leave. So I think it's really interesting that he gave him an opportunity to even be like, pick your day, tell me when.
Yeah.
I think even the other thing he calls out is the magicians and stuff are able to replicate what God did, but they could not repeal what God did. They couldn't take it away, right?
That sound like the enemy.
Yeah, it's interesting that he had to call Moses to get rid of them, right? They could create something that looked like it. We can make a version of this, but ultimately they couldn't actually stop what God was doing.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting call out or just an observation that, as much as they could make their own frogs, they could not get rid of the frogs that God had already set.
That true authority. This is my creation. I tell it what to do, and it responds to my voice.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were only imitating what God was doing. And it wasn't until we see when it gets to the plague of the gnats that they couldn't even produce the gnats anymore. So even their power was so limited in a way. And I just was thinking about, I'm like, okay, before these situations where the plagues happened, where these magicians were being summoned to actually do something big like this, were there other things that they would do before this? I'm like, what did they traditionally do to use their power and their sorcery prior to this? Because I mean, I haven't seen it in scripture or know the history, but obviously we know they were using it and doing it for something to know that it was available.
Right.
But yeah,
I just see this theme of Pharaoh's advisors at some point, hey fam.
Yeah.
A couple chapters ago, we're talking about the straw resources being taken away, and one of his advisors comes and is like, we gotta chill on these Israelites. And now that they can't get rid of these gnats, they're like, hey, this is God. You need to. And yet Pharaoh's being stubborn, is like, nah. It's actually interesting to see that.
And it's like, oh, now you want to say it's God. You didn't know my God before, and now you're like, oh no, this him for real.
Yeah.
In my version, it says this is the finger of God.
Yeah.
Yep, mine said it too. Yeah.
And I'm just like, they even know that this is all that he can do.
This is the finger.
They can tell oh no, we dealing with something different here.
Yeah.
Hold on, Pharaoh. We do a little bit. But what he's doing, bringing these swarms and taking them out, we can tell that this is big.
Yeah.
This is finger, fam. A finger?
Yeah.
A finger?
Yeah.
No, I think it's not hitting me. It's the finger is crazy because a finger can create all this chaos. I can't imagine a hand.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying in this
Four
description?
fours. Yeah.
Yeah. It's dope.
Yeah. And so I mean, that he goes from the frogs to the gnats, eventually the flies as well, right? And again, by the time we get to the gnats from here on out, it's just God producing plagues. There's no, if we're talking about, again, this battle of the gods, the other God is submitted at this point. Like, I can't do it.
Facts.
And so, anything specifically here at the end of 8, when you look at the gnats or the flies, anything else that jumps out to you guys about these plagues?
I like this separation that he has between.
I was just gonna say that. Yep.
He has between Goshen and the Egyptians. That just even just shows like I can even make it stop here. I can make it stop there. What were you gonna say though?
Yep. No, that's what I was gonna say. I love the distinction that now we start to see, but between God saying like, okay, these are my people. My hand are on them. My hand is on their land. Versus like the Egyptians and their people and their land. And so I think it's cool that God did, like he's making it clear, like it's this clear boundary and now this line drawn between like the Israelites and the Egyptians, and I am the Lord that is with the Israelites. And you'll see that because I'm producing more plagues, even more severely, and they're not going to be touched by it.
Yeah. And I even just had this thought that like he probably even let the Israelites experience a little bit of this to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what it feels like. This is my wrath to even prove to the Israelites that I'm God. Like, I'm making these things happen, and you experience it for yourself. Now you can see what my protection feels like, right?
Yeah, because it wasn't until that point that I realized that, oh, wait, like, all the land was experiencing it. So that means the Israelites, they were seeing all these frogs and, like, all that stuff, too. And we don't get to hear they're, like, murmuring or complaining or being like, oh, now we dealing with, why are we having to deal with this, too? But now we do see that they're getting favored in this way. But, yeah. Still showing them.
I think it's so interesting, just kind of Pharaoh's negotiation, right, with God as he's trying to still get something out of this, and like, all right, don't go so far, or do it here in this land, or whatnot, right? And I also think it's interesting because, to me, the point of it is really just for deceit, because ultimately he still has no plans to actually let them go. So he's just saying like, what's just enough for me to give up for God to stop, like. And I just want to do just enough that'll actually get you to go back and relieve me from, what it is that's happening. And like I said, it's just so much like in our lives, man, where we just do just enough, God. Like
I was like, I can't even get mad at Pharaoh, because how many times did I say to God, like, if you get me out of this thing, like, then I'll like, I'll give you my all, or I'll serve you and stuff, just to go right back to it.
Doing what you was doing.
Yeah. And so I really do feel like Pharaoh was a good depiction of what it looks like to confess, but not really to have full and true repentance. Like,
girl, if you don't go somewhere with that bar.
Like, Pharaoh did not turn from his ways. Like, true repentance is turning from your ways, and to know that, like, he confessed it. Yeah, he confessed that, God was Lord and everything, and he knew that, like, okay, I need Moses and them to pray on my behalf. Yet his heart was still hardened, and he still did not turn from his ways.
This water bottle.
Keep on.
I'm sick of it. That was a bar, okay?
That's good. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah, because eventually, I can't find it right now, but eventually later on, even Moses says to Pharaoh, like, I know you don't fear the Lord. Yeah. Like, he calls him out in a couple chapters later. He's like, I know you don't fear the Lord, so guess what? I'm coming back. Like, I'll be back with another one.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good. Jeez. Confession of repentance. That's good. Okay. Well, that concludes our reading for today. So we finished at 8. So we'll be back to get the rest of the plagues tomorrow. But man, that was a great conversation. Prayed again it was helpful for you all. Stick around for kind of some additional information here at the end of this. But look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for the VIBEZ Daily Podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or download our favorite, the VIBEZ Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch. Join us next time as we continue our journey through the Bible. Take good care.